السلام علیکم بینندگان عزیز. امیدوار هستم که در هر نقطه دنیا باشین خوش و آرام باشین. امروز در برنامه ما در صدای حق تلویزیون دکتر صاحب شیرجان احمدزای داریم و جای بسیار افتخار است که اینا امروز وقت خود برای ما دادن و چون این برنامه آخر ماست در سال 2020 بسیار به نظر من مهم بود که راجع به کشور ما افغانستان صحبت کنیم و مخصوصا درباره از این که در ظرف 2 یا 3 هفته اگر شما متوجه شوید بسیار در افغانستان حالت خوب نیست، زیاد وایلنس زیاد شده و همچنان امنیت کمتر شده از روزی که پروسه صلح شروع شده امر ادمنستریشن دونالد ترامپ. امروز بسیار نظرات دکتر صاحب میخوایم و پیش از این که امرشان شروع کنیم میخواستم که بایوگرافیشان بخوانم. این بایوگرافی کوتاهشان است، اصلا نام خدا ماشاءالله بسیار زیاد معلومات داره دکتر صاحب و بازم جای افتخار است. تشکر دکتر صاحب که شما امروز آمدین. Sherjan is the director of the Center of Afghanistan Studies at the University of Nebraska at Omaha. Sherjan is a regular contributor and commentator for many national and international media outlets such as Voices of America and BBC Radio and TV on various issues related to the US, Pakistan, Taliban, security and terrorism in South Asia. He's also written for CNN, BBC, Conversation, and Omaha World Herald on Afghan peace process and regional security. He has also participated in many rounds of US-Russian track two talks on Afghanistan and regional security and provided feedback to policymakers. Sherjan is on the board of the Afghan Community Organization in Omaha, Nebraska, where he resides. Sherjan has also written papers and co-authored a book on transboundary waters of Afghanistan, focusing on hydropolitics that is in play in the region, and has written about water security and its socio-political impacts on the people in the region. He's also assisted with a desktop study of the Afghanistan conflict assessment for USAID and has worked with Chatham House, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, on climate fragility risk fact sheet on Afghanistan. The fact sheet was submitted to United Nations Security Council in order to help the Council with understanding the risk that climate represents for achieving sustaining peace in Afghanistan. And an enormous honor and pleasure to have this background and to have you on our show today, Dr. Saib. If you could please briefly give us in your own words a background and introduction on yourself, that would be wonderful.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate this opportunity. And of course, I present my greetings to all the audience that you have on your channel. This is a great opportunity to talk to fellow Afghans from wherever they are. All of us are scattered around the world due to the unfortunate conditions in Afghanistan since for the last 40 years. Everybody would have loved to be in Afghanistan and be with friends and families, with fellow Afghans. But here we are. But this is a great opportunity for us to highlight who we are, what Afghanistan is, and how we can help ourselves to stand on our own feet and be active members of the international community. I know Afghanistan for the last 40 years have been suffering in many ways. Our generation was born in conflict, and it still lives in conflict. And I'm one of them, as you are, as many of our audience right now are. I was born in Afghanistan and lived my refugee life in Pakistan, came back to Afghanistan, worked for the Afghan government in various positions, came to the United States, did my studies here, and now I'm the director for Center for Afghanistan Studies. I'm in my plans to pursue my PhD. Hopefully that works. But overall, my experience working in Afghanistan and here in the United States and in academic institutions like the University of Nebraska in Omaha, that has a history of working in Afghanistan for the last 48 years. So my center was established in 1972, and I am the second director of the center. Wow. So the previous director headed the center for about 40 years. and now I'm leading this wonderful institutions. And we have had projects and activities in Afghanistan for the last many decades. Many of people from my generation are the beneficiaries of the material that was given to the Afghan refugees, and as well as to Kabul University. In many ways, our university is still the first sister university to our wonderful university in Kabul, Afghanistan, the first university in Afghanistan. The way I ended up here, of course, I came from my studies, and of course, remain here, and now I lead the center, this wonderful center. We have had networks and activities and projects, all of them in higher education and education sector in Afghanistan. Plus my interest in political issues, international issues. I have been providing advice to many policymakers and others directly or indirectly through media, and providing analysis to public on various issues concerning Afghanistan and the region. Actually, it's part of my interest in a job that as a center, we provide analysis and feedback on various issues. This is a wonderful opportunity, John. Thank you very much for providing me with this opportunity. And this is great to talk to our fellow Afghans, to highlight what is the situation right now in Afghanistan and how we as Afghans can be key players in that one, and in the whole scenario, and help each other to be what we are and be better, and understanding the conflict itself. It's a very dynamic situation where the conflict in Afghanistan has many variants and many shapes, and many contributors and contributions from various people and countries. For us, it's very important. We always suffer when we hear a blast happening in Kabul, lives lost in Kabul. Unfortunately, recently after the deal with Taliban, this spike has been increasing. It bothers me. It bothers you. It bothers any other Afghan that loves Afghanistan. No matter where we are, no matter what citizenship we have. But still, it's the roots that reminds us where we come from. This is a great opportunity. Thank you very much. I live in the United States, as you said, here in Omaha, Nebraska, right in the middle of the United States, with my family, 2 sons. My wife and my mother live with me, so I'm glad to have them around. This is a great opportunity for me to be with my closest people in the world. I have 2 sons, 15 and 13. Both of them go to school. Always remind them who we are. This is we as people living not in Afghanistan but in other countries always have this feeling that we would like to give our future generation a good life, not the one that we enjoyed. Unfortunately, was full of conflict, full of sorrow, and I hope our efforts, just like everybody else, is trying to make good out of their lives, result something good for them. And in one or another way, help Afghanistan, the countries where most of us were born or belong to, and want to go back and see how we can help. But this is a great opportunity. The recent conflict spike in Afghanistan, the talks with Taliban, and the Trump administration had offered us hope and disappointments in both cases. But there's always a hope for peace, and I hope that happens in our lifetime.
Absolutely, and that's such a beautiful statement that you said, that our roots are in Afghanistan. And I often feel, even though I was physically born here, and my dad was here in the technocrat era in the 70s, it doesn't matter. There's this void that I constantly feel inside of me, and this constant emptiness. And any work that I've done and I've dedicated really my entire life to being able to have that constant connection. And it's such a beautiful thing that you are also, both of us are able to give our children this better future in a place where hopefully, and also keep that connection with back home and our roots. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for your extremely important work. I know that the university and this is a very essential institution and a place that's been around for a very long time, doing very important work and keeping us connected to the policies and to the great work and research that is being done in Afghanistan. If we're going to move on now to talk a little bit about the current political situation in Afghanistan. And if you don't mind, when you answer, of course, to give us an overview in English and also Dari, so that our viewers that are speaking Dari can also, or Pashto, whichever one, it doesn't matter, can understand. I think that what's happening is at every Afghan table, there's this discussion and healthy discussions, but a lot of debate and arguments over what's going on. But I don't think that people fully understand the political context of what's going on. Some people have bits and pieces from the last 40 years, a very short amount of time, but a great deal of conflict and a great deal of change in a very small amount of time. The 40 ساله که جنگ شروع شده تا بالا بسیار تغییرات آمده از نگاه سیاسی و بسیاری افغان هستن هر شب یا هر روز که میشینن سر میز همون فامیل خود راجع به سیاست صحبت میکنن میشه که 100% نفهمن که فعلا اصلا چی موضوع است چی گپ است و چرا قدر مشکلات است.
تشکر فرشته جان. شما درست گفتین. هر زمانی که ما افغان‌ها سخن میشینیم نان میخوریم یا 3-4 نفر ما یک جا میشیم در مورد افغانستان گپ میزنیم، چون که یک احساس داریم هر جا که هستیم و فرق نمیکنه اگر بعض ما در امریکا یا در غرب تولد شده باشیم، باز هم از فامیل این احساس گرفتیم، از اعضای فامیل احساس گرفتیم که جایگاه اصل تمام افغان‌ها افغانستان است و هر حالتی که دیگه میگذارم سرمایه به گونه‌ای تاثیرگذار است و متاسفانه در 40 سال گذشته، در 4 دهه گذشته این تاثیرات منفی بودن. همیشه خبر غم شنیدیم، خبر جنگ شنیدیم، خبر کشتار شنیدیم و جای تاسف است. متاسفانه دلیل عمده‌ای که اکثر افغان‌ها فعلا مهاجر هستند بدون سرنوشتشان در کمپ‌های پاکستان و ایران و در ترکیه و در یونان جنگ فعلی است. دلیل اون که ما نسل ما فعلا در غرب هستیم، در اروپا هستیم، در امریکا هستیم. نامنی در افغانستان بود که پدرهای ما، فامیل‌های ما مجبور شدن که برای تهیه یک زندگی مرفه و آسان فامیل‌های خود به جای دیگر برن. هیچ کس با خوشی خود از خانه خود دور نمیشه اگر کدام دلیلی وجود نداشته باشه. و واقعا افغانستان و افغان‌ها یکی از جمله مردم و کشور هستند که متأسفانه در 40 سال گذشته از همین آسیب پذیر بودند. وضع فعلی افغانستان متأسفانه تا حدی که امکان و توقع میرفت تغییر کنه نکرد، بلکه وضع فعلی بدتر شده متأسفانه، بالخصوص بعد از امضای توافقنامه بین امریکا و طالبان. و باید امریکا بگیم که دونالد ترامپ و طالبان، چون که در مورد این موافقتنامه داخل امریکا هم نظرات مختلف موجود است. کسی که موافق است داخل اداره دونالد ترامپ است و مخالفین هم زیاد داره در سراسر امریکا. آنها که در افغانستان کار کردن، رفتن، دیدن از ارزش‌ها و اقدار افغانی خبر دارن، با افغان‌ها احساس همدردی میکنن، میفهمن که زیان و ضرر این نقصان از این قرارداد و موافقتنامه با طالبان چه قضیت است. دستاوردهایی که ما داشتیم در 20 سال گذشته بالخصوص اونا در مرجع خطر واقع شدن و آسیب پذیر هستند تا به حال، بالخصوص دستاوردهای آزادی بیان، آزادی گشتگذار در افغانستان در هر جایی که هستیم، آزادی امنیت شخصی، آزادی زنان، حقوق زنان، حقوق بشر، اطفال، حقوق جوانان، مواقع تعلیم و تربیت، مواقع معرف. این چیزایی بود که در سالهای گذشته بالخصوص در زمان طالبان و قبل از زمان مجاهدین که خانه جنگی بود افغانستان، جنگ داخلی جریان داشت، نبود. دستاوردهای بزرگی هستند که مایه افتخار ماست، اما وجه دلسوزی ما هم است و خفگان ما هم است که چرا این دستاوردهایی که با قربانی ها به دست آورده این به آسانی از دست بدیم. تا به حال متاسفانه از طرف طالبان در این مورد کدام روشنایی نیامده که آیا کدام از این دستاوردها حفظ میشه اگر اونا داخل حکومت افغانستان شامل مدغم شدن با حکومت افغانستان و پس به جامعه افغانستان برگردن. چون اونا هم در پاکستان زندگی میکنن، فامیل هایشان در اونجاست. در جمع طالبان هستن شاید بعضی افراد هستن که بعد در افغانستان میرنجن، اما متاسفانه در داخل افغانستان ببینیم بدون از جنگ و خونریزی بر افغانها کدام چیز دیگری ندادن. ارزش هایی را که فعلا افغانها به معتقد هستند بعض اکثر نظرات قماندانهایشان و رهبرانشان مخالف است و خدا کنه که رایی را درک کنند که افغانستان 20 سال پیش که اونا در وقت دیده بودن آل نیست او از بین رفتن، ولی افغانستان نوین است. افغانستانی است که جوان داره، نیم نفوسش جوانتر از 25 سال و پایینتر از 30 است. این افغانستانی است که مردمش تقریبا جهانی ده از طریق مطبوعات، از طریق رسانه ها، از طریق تلویزیون، از طریق رادیو شنیدن در جهان را سفر کردن، آموختن از تجارب دیگران. افغانستان است که میخواد سیال باشه در جهان با کشورهای دیگه و با همسایه‌های خود. این ارزش‌های است که زمان که اونا در حکومت بودند در سال 90 قبل از 2000 و مجاهدین در حکومت بودند در زمان نبود. تعلیم تربیت بسیار پایین بود، معارف پایین بود، سطح معارف بالا رفته، اقتصاد فرق کرده. ارزش‌های بسیار بلند را داریم در افغانستان که ما باید رو حفظ کنیم. هر قسم امنیت داخلی که در افغانستان باید این ارزش‌های بلند که ما داریم و بزرگی ما داریم باید حفظ شود. و اگر میخوایم در جهان باید یک سیال شریک باشه، این پیشرفت‌هایی را کردیم این را باید از دست ندهیم. متاسفانه نگرانی بزرگ از این ناحیه وجود داره که آیا بعد از توافقنامه امریکا و طالب‌ها و بعد از اینکه گفتگو بین حکومت جمهوری اسلامی افغانستان و طالبان موافق شود، یک حکومتداریه که تا بال ما دوباره خبر نداریم شاید بیاد و همیشه امید میره که یک حکومتداری باشه که همین ارزش‌ها را نگهداری کنند. در زمان طالبان قبل از زمان مجاهدین چیزایی که فعلا داریم، پانتونایی که فعلا داریم، مکاتبی که فعلا داریم نبودن، سرک‌هایی که فعلا داریم نبودن، بندهای برق که فعلا ساخته میشه نبودن، انکشافی که فعلا شده گرفته در عرصه شبکه‌های برقی نبود. این دستاورد بزرگی است که نه تنها مردمی که در شهرها زندگی میکنن این حس کردن و دیدن، بلکه در اطراف هم به گونه مختلفه وزن تفاوت بزرگ بین انکشاف و توسعه در شهرها و اطراف افغانستان وجود داره که باید کم شود، چون که اکثریت مردم افغانستان در قریه‌جات زندگی میکنن، در ولایت زندگی میکنن، نه در شهرهای بزرگ، 5-6 شهر بزرگ افغانستان. اونا هم ضرورت دارن و حکومت افغانستان و هر کس که حاکم افغانستان است و مردم خدمت میکنه ایره در نظر داشته باشن که ضرورت از اون مردم چی است. فرق میکنه نسبت ضرورت مردم شهرنشین. یعنی urban rural divide که در افغانستان موجود است ایره باید از بین بریم و کمتر شود. یک دلیل عمده منازعه بین مردم در هر جایی که باشه یکی از دلایلش divide urban rural می باشه، چون که عقاید و ارزش‌ها در urban area و rural area فرق میکنن. متاسفانه در تاریخ افغانستان همیشه عقاید و ارزش‌ها عمیق‌تر بوده و بزرگتر بوده. در زمان‌های شاه الله خان اگه ببینیم rural urban divide بزرگتر بود که مجبور ساخت شاه الله خان از افغانستان بره. بعض مردم در علیه جهاد اعلان کردند. زمانهای بعدی که ما دیدیم این حادثه رخ داد و فعلا هم. اما امیدواری است با وجودی که یک خونریزی در افغانستان جریان داره و جنگ شدت گرفته، امیدواری است که افغانستان را ببینیم که نسل آینده ما به صلح و ثبات و آرامی زندگی کنه. اما مجادله و مبارزه ضرورت داره در حالت که چیزایی که داریم او را از دست ندهیم. یک بار افغانستان را در سالهای 90 از دست دادیم. بعد از آمدن شوروی او افغانستان نوی که بود او را از دست دادیم. یک نهاد نو ساخته شده که را باید از دست ندهیم. تمام افغان‌هایی که در سراسر جهان هستند، چی در امریکا هستند، چی در غرب هستند، دیگر کشورهای غرب هستند، همیشه آرزو دارن که پس برن افغانستان ببینن. افغانستان را که اونا دیده بودن قبل از انقلاب و قبل از جنگ‌های داخلی یک افغانستان دیگه است. اکثر اوقات باعث خوشی مردم افغانستان میشه، اما متاسفانه در اواخر ما بیشتر دیدیم که باعث غم و اندوه مردم افغانستان شده که کل موضوع رنج میبریم و خدا کنه که رنج کمتر شد. پس میگردم به گفتگو بین امریکا و طالبا. متاسفانه چیزی که توقع میرفت نشد. توقع بود که آغاز صلح باشه، آغاز گفتگوهای نو باشه بین مردم افغانستان، بین طالبا و حکومت افغانستان. هر شخصی که در جنگ میمیره او اگر عسکر جمهوری اسلامی افغانستان باشه که برای ارزش‌های ملی و اسلامی افغانستان جان خود نثار میکنه، و یا طالب ها باشه که در برابر از اونا میجنگن، مادر داره که میرنجه، اگر او طالب کشته شود یا عسکر جمهوری اسلامی افغانستان شهید شود، مادر است که میرنجه و گریان میکنه، فامیلی است که پس میمانه بعد از مرگ او. بازم افغانستان سرزو ما میرنجیم و خفه میشیم. باعث میشه که ما همیشه امید داشته باشیم که این جنگ خاتمه یابد و زمان بیاید که در افغانستان هر دو جناح، حکومت افغانستان و طالبان و هر مخالف دیگه افغانستان باشه، در محال صلح و ثبات و امنیت زندگی کنن که ما از این چیزا بی‌غم شویم. متاسفانه تا به حال امیدواری به شکلی که بود با قوه پیوسته و قد نپیوسته، نگرانی ها زیاد شده و این یک نگاه سیاسی هم داره. وقتی که مذاکرات بین گروه های مختلف میشه، هر گروه کوشش میکنه که در سر میز مذاکرات برای اظهار موقف قوی دستاوردهای بزرگی در صحنه جنگ داشته باشه. فکر میکنم که طالبان هم از این تاکتیک استفاده میکنن که تا در افغانستان دستاوردهای داشته باشن که در وقتی که زمانی که با حکومت جمهوری افغانستان داخل گفتگو میشن، نشان میده که ما منطقی زیاد کنترل میکنیم، مردم زیاد تحت سلطه خود داریم و مردم زیاد طرفدار ما هستند و یک قوت و نیرو داریم. شما باید گپ‌ها و تقاضای ما رو بپذیرید. متاسفانه قیمت بسیار بزرگ است. قیمت جان باختن هزاران تن در سال گذشته و صدها تن و ده‌ها تن هر روز است که قیمت افغانستان دیگه پرداخته نمیتونه. بسیار بزرگ است برای ما. کل ما میفهمیم، تمام میفهمیم که ضرورت به صلح داریم. چرا موافق نشیم که این درد که مادر افغان احساس میکنه، چی مادر طالب است، چی مادر عسکر افغان است، این درد احساس میکنه. هر روز کشتار میتیم، میبرن، مردم شهید میشن، مردم عام شهید میشن، خانه‌شان از خانه‌شان بیجا میشن. درد بزرگ است که این رو باید ما دعوا کنیم و از بین ببریم. امیدوار هستیم که گفتگوی جمهوری اسلامی افغانستان و طالبان مثمر تمام شود، اما در این حال شاید شاهد خروجی بیشتر شویم. فعلا شهر کابل یک شهر متشنج است، تحت دهشت است، تحت ترس است. هر افغان که در کابل زندگی میکنه نمیفهمه که از خانه خود ببره پس زنده میاد یا نه. یک مادر که طفل خود به مکتب راه میکنه و این دعا میکنه که شاید تا 4 روز پس زنده بیاد. یک حالت بسیار خراب است. یک کارمندی که بیرون مبرایه، چی کارمند دولتی باشه غیر دولتی یا آدمی که سرک چیز مفرشه، همیشه باور نداره که پس شام خانه زنده میره. و کسانی که این کار را انجام میده باید بفهمن که اگر اونا سر افغانستان حکومت نیت حکومتداری میکنن، این مردم است که اونا برش رای میتن و سرزو حکومت میکنن. وقتی که مردم اونا برش سرکی حکومت میکنن، داشت حکومت میکنن که کشتار پیش میبرن. یک عقیده منفیت متاسفانه که اونا پیش میبرن اینجا.
Well, Dr. Saib, thank you so much for bringing up these very, very poignant points. I jotted down a few of them. One of the things that Dr. Saib that spoke so eloquently about was bridging the gap between the urban and rural classes, and and that's a common problem that happens in a lot of countries. But one of the challenges that we face is bridging that gap. And another thing that you brought up, you're actually probably the first person that I've ever spoken to or interviewed who's actually spoken about the psychological long-term effects of losing grief and loss, but specifically losing children. And it's fair to say that whether you are the mother of a Talib or the mother of a civilian, a mother is a mother and a father is a father, and you're still a parent, and it's still loss. So thank you so much for being so fair and actually bringing up that point that regardless of what side you're on and who you what your political faction is or what ideology you belong to, you're still at the end of the day, so many things are at stake. And the number one thing that's at stake is human life. And Afghanistan has advanced so greatly as far as the last 20 years. Women's rights has gone. You've mentioned. You've also mentioned, that education has risen. I know because I have family members that have come here over the wave of 40 years in different times, and depending on when they're in Afghanistan, it really does reflect their education level. If you were, in Afghanistan and you left right around the time where people were too afraid to go to school, then your level is obviously going to be less. It was just a game of survival, which it still is, but on a different level. One of the other things that I wanted to mention is that of all the advances that we've been able to make, free media, right? Uncensored media, something that's almost unheard of in that region of the world. It's so beautiful to be able to say what you want to say freely. One day, my children were watching. I'm very much intrigued and a big fan of the show Afghan Star. And my daughter was like, wait, this is Afghanistan? And she was so shocked. And I said, yeah, absolutely. I said, this is how far we've come. So it's so unfortunate that the recent events that have occurred are pointing and signaling toward regression and hindrance of all the accomplishments that we've made very recently, which is the segues me into my next thought, which is about the recent violent attacks that have been happening. And it seems as though the pattern, Dr. Saib, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, has been that the target for a lot of what's happening has been toward these greatly advanced academic institutions that we have, journalists. For me, that is, again, the majority of the country is the youth, and very, very heart-wrenching that our futures are being diminished. کلانترین بزرگترین چیزی که من متوجه شدم است که دمی حملهایی که دمی وقت شده زیادتر امی پنتوناست که اتک میشه و همچنان جورنالیست هایی که هستن کشته میشن. اگر شما بتونین برای ما نظریات خود بدین که چرا فکر میکنین که از دیگر جایا که زیاد attacks they're happening more with the academic institutions and journalists. Why do you think that they're the ones who are being targeted in the most recent attacks?
Well, the very short answer would be because they're soft targets. By defining your soft targets, they're easily accessible. They don't carry guns. They don't drive in bulletproof vehicles. They don't work behind thick walls and thick windows, bulletproof windows. They walk freely among the public, and they are the brains of the society. People look up to them for inspirations and aspire to be like them. The purpose of groups that try to spread terror among the population is to first target anybody who is feeling secure, make him feel insecure. So that is what's happening right now. And the Afghan public, be that in the cities or in rural areas, are made to feel insecure. That makes them feel that the government they are supposed to be served with or by is not providing them with the basic security that they deserve as human beings, as citizens. That put them against their own government. When that puts them against their own government, that plays at the hand of somebody else who is trying to make these things happen. And then they can claim, look, Your government that you are really proud of cannot even stop these things. So you better have an alternative. And we are the alternative. So it is creating a wedge, a distance between the public and the government to delegitimize, to make feelings and thoughts in the minds of common person that the administration that is supposed to serve you is not capable enough or not capable at all to provide a very basic physical security to you and your families and your friends, the local person who walks out in the market to buy some groceries and then he's killed. That's all to wreak havoc and spread terror among the populace. Whenever people, human beings, don't feel secure, they blame whoever is supposed to provide security, which is police, and police is the Afghan government itself. And that raises questions. Are you able enough to provide me with security? If not, go away, bring somebody else. That is the only strategic reasons they're trying to make a wedge, create a wedge between the public and the government who is supposed to serve them. Recently, the Kabul incidents, every day we hear news of 3 or 4 explosions, sticky bombs, mines here and there, and people's lives are lost. Today, this morning, there was one in Jalalabad in eastern Afghanistan. There was another in Kabul. So 2 or 3 every morning, we hear all these things, major areas, major population areas, these things happen. It was very sad to see a journalist in Jalalabad in his first tweet reporting about an incident saying a person was killed in that incident. A few minutes later, he said, I did not know that that reported person was my own brother. So you could see this insecurity, this feeling among the populace is forcing the people to go the other way. This has happened in rural Afghanistan on a larger scale, actually. And that's why in unfortunate situations, in a number of areas, many rural residents went against the government because they did not feel secure in their own villages, in their homes, for whatever reason. That might be mistakes or something on purpose by either side, by Taliban or by mistakes of the Afghan government or the coalition forces. They did not feel secure. They said, what is the benefit of having you as my government when I even cannot live securely in my own village, in my home? That is, when we human beings feel insecure and outside, we come back to the 4 walls of our home. That is the more secure place as we feel into. And when that place is not secure, then this hope of living is gone. And we tend to find somebody to blame for so that we are relieved. And that's why people are blaming somebody. We always look up to somebody who is providing us security. Most of the time, that is the government itself. That is happening in Afghanistan. The public opinion is still strong, but it's not weakening. It's not weakening, but it's still shattering. I hope the Afghan government does a better job in this, preventing such attacks, preventing the loss of life, not only in urban areas, but also in rural areas, which is important because as Afghans, we're all the same regardless where we live under the government. And the enemy will be striking wherever it can to create this wedge between the Afghan government and its people that it's supposed to serve, not rule. Mind you, some of us believe the government is supposed to be ruling, not ruling. That's the common misunderstanding. Government is supposed to serve people. It's a servant to the people. And that is the feeling the Afghan government should have. Doesn't matter who is going to be the next leader or the next administrator in the government. They are supposed to serve, not rule. In our religion, that says so. In public opinion, that says so. But unfortunately, in the past, especially in the Taliban, there was a question of ruling rather than serving. Hakim, Mahkum was the way of life. And that mentality is still coming back, and I hope it doesn't.
Absolutely. و دکتر سبسا چند چیز بسیار مهمه گفتن یکی خود راجع به در دین ما در اسلام هر حکومت ما سرشان حق داریم, right? Like we have rights over them. They are to serve us, but unfortunately, history has shown that it's been the opposite, right? That you give people power and unfortunately they use it to control. From a psychological point of view, as I روانی و psychology, power and control، قدرت و کنترل اینمی دو چیز است که چی باشه بین یک شوهر و خانم. And if there's a domestic violence issue, those are the two roots of it. And politically as well, power and control, and the means of attaining that is usually through fear-mongering and inferiority complex. And years ago, I used to teach high school history, and I remember I had a student in my class. We were talking about slavery. And the student was very astute, and he said in the middle of the class, you know, a student had a question of, well, how is it that an entire continent was able to be enslaved? And he raised his hand. I will never forget this, one of my brightest students, and he said, it starts with the mind. یک چیزی بسیار مهم است که به توجه شویم که همیشه وقتی که آدم تاریخ یک مملکت بخونه یا راجع به یک سایدی زیاد درسش بخونه، معلومات بکنه، همیشه اول از نگاه سایکولوژی شروع میشه. اگر برای یک کسی گفته بیری هر روز بگویی که خودت آدم خوب نیستی، هر روز اینو میره تکرار کنی، آخر او باور میکنه که راستی که من آدم خوب نیستم. اگه بیخی آدم خوب هم باشه، آخر امیر قبول میکنه. و وقتی که گفتی شما یک نفر بیایه خود انفجار کنه در یک جایی که بیچاره استودنت ها شاگردان میرن اونجا درس میخوانن، تفنگ ندارن، قلم تفنگشان است، یا میرن برای تحصیل و این یک ترس بسیار کلان پیدا میشه. مادر و پدر در خاندان فکر میکنن ما اولاد خودم بانم نمانم که مکتب بره، و همچنان فکر میکنن که اگر ما از خانه خود بیرون برم و تا شام نمیفهمم که ما پس میایم یا اولادم پس میتونه زنده بیایه، یه سوال بسیار کلان پیدا میشه برای حکومت از او مملکت و گورنمنت از او مملکت که چرا این رقم باید زندگی باشه و چرا این رقم باید یک مملکت زندگی خود پیش ببره. و این گپی که شما گفتین راستی سر ما واقعا تاثیر کرد که این جورنالیست خودش راپور داد، باز پسان متاسفانه فهمید که دور از مشما باشه، برادر خودش بود. این بسیار سخت است تحمل کردن این رقم درد و این رقم رنج. و خودم شخصا هر روز که روانشناسی میکنم همراه مهاجرای افغان اینو میره متوجه میشم که PTSD که دارن، Post Traumatic Stress Syndrome، آنقدر سر حسابشان تاثیر میکنه، سر infrastructure فامیلیشان. هیچ افغان نیست تا بالا که همراهش تماس دارم که یک رقم PTSD نداشته باشه. چی باشه که فامیلش یک رنج تیر کرده باشه، یا کس از فامیل خود از دست داده، یا خانه خود یا زندگی خود. دکترها داریم که چقدر معلومات داشتن، چقدر قدرت داشتن، چقدر زندگی خوب داشتن در افغانستان، این جمعیان پیتزا دلیوری میکنن. این بسیار سر اعصاب انسان تاثیر میکنه. و من نمیگم خدای نخواسته که این کار مجبور استیم، آدم باید سپورت کنه فامیل خود هر رقم که باشه. خودمون مگه خدای نخواسته مجبور شم هر کاری که میباشه میکنیم از مجبوری برای فامیل خود. من نمیگم که این کار خوب نیسته یا کار پایان است. خدا نکنه کل ما خداوند تعالی کل ما را یک رقم ایکول جور کرده و ما به هر نظر یک نظر کل ما را ببینه، چی که دکتر باشیم، چی که یک جای دیگه کار کنیم، این فرق نمیکنه. همه یعنی هدف معنی است که کل زندگی خود تحصیل میکنن، باز باید زندگی خود حسر در یک جای شروع کنن که اصلا سر اعصابشان و بسیار تاثیر میکنه و اگه تداوی نشه و بسیار مثبت بسیار ببخشید منفی نتیجه می داشته باشه. Later on in their life, there will be long-term effects that will affect their families and their relationships. So Dr. Sher, I want to, without getting too further off the tangent, it happens in every show that we start talking about something, but these really important core issues come up. And it's important to acknowledge that we are a people who are suffering, especially psychologically and mentally, from whatever trauma we have endured in our lives and back home. How can we here in the United States of America help or assist in lowering these violent attacks back home? کدام راه هسته یا کدام نصیحت شما دارین که ما خود امریکا هستیم متاسفانه نمیتونیم که especially که آل کووید است و کرونا است ما خودم عروض احساس میکنم که پیش خود فکر میکنم یگان نفر که چی رقم بتانم کمک کنم یا چی رقم بتانم که contribute کنم برای ازمی متاسفانه حادث هایی که میشه در مملکت ما.
Absolutely. We Afghans have this nature of, because the way our society had been in Afghanistan and that region, we don't think individually, but we think collectively. We have had families when one person works and the rest of the family just stays home and benefits from that salary of one person. We are a collective society of human beings where we feel secure in larger homes, in larger group of people around, especially our family members. The same feeling is spread out around the world. Wherever we are, we tend to go back to our core family members for help and for helping them. We can do a lot of stuff. We can do a lot of things at many levels. And we have been doing this as people in the West, in diaspora, in many shapes or ways. We help our fellow Afghans, fellow family members in Afghanistan by sending them money. We help them by providing them or helping them with some educational opportunities in whatever way we can. We help them here by helping them in daily stuff, buying them groceries or if they need. But those are individual levels. How we can help ourselves as a society. But before that, let me add something here very important, that when we are in Afghanistan in the conflict zone, we don't enjoy the opportunity of being calm and the goodies that we have in the West. We get out of Afghanistan, unfortunately, right now, in situations like now, to come to the West for better lives. But quite a good number of us, when we come back here, we live a very comfortable life. And we sort of ignore it. And when we talk back about Afghanistan, we tend to support some of the thoughts and policies that are at odds against the things that we enjoy as human beings living in the West. There's a depth in this conversation I'm trying to tell my fellow Afghans who are listening to me. I want to make this in English so everybody can understand, even their kids, the family members can understand. What in our religion, it says, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, says, whatever you like for yourself, you like it for others. And whatever you don't like for yourself, don't like it for others. Many of us in the West like good life, good cars, comfortable life. But when we talk about Afghanistan, we tend to support the despotic regimes and say that era of that time was the best era for Afghanistan. Be that Taliban regime, be that Mujahideen regime, be that whatever regime, whatever you call it. But we don't tell our fellow Afghans that whatever way of life that I've enjoyed here, I would like you to live in the same life in Afghanistan. But then we say, well, that person, that mullah, that leader was the best leader, you should have had it. Well, if you liked it, you should have lived under that person's rule. Why did you come out? So there's a conflict in our minds. The nostalgic way. Some of us long for the 70s, some of us long for the 80s, some of us long for the 90s. And all of those times were not good times, unfortunately. If you really long for those times, then why we are here in the West? Just be honest to yourself. You enjoy good insurance, good healthcare, good government. You have the opportunity to speak up. And many in Afghanistan don't even have the opportunity to speak up. They get killed. Many of them under Taliban regime. They cannot express their thoughts and words as openly as we can do here in the West. If they do, they get killed. But we here in the West do those things, enjoy those rights. Let's enjoy these rights, and at the same time, let's want such rights for the people in Afghanistan. It supports those policies that can give our fellow Afghans the same rights that we have here in the West, because we have, many of us are citizens of these countries. We abide by the laws of these countries. We enjoy the good life of the West. Let's support this thought that the fellow Afghans in Afghanistan should have same lifestyle, should have some same basic rights that we have. My daughter can go, my son can go to school without any fear that she or he will be bothered on the streets. Let's support these thoughts that I enjoy here. Let's support these for our fellow Afghans in Afghanistan also. Let's not support the policies that are despotic or are there to subjugate some people rather than embolden them, give them rights to express. Many of us are conflicting within our minds, in our brains, in our thoughts. We admire the policies of certain people who were involved in the killings of Afghanistan, who are our leaders right now here, but we don't want to live under their rule. We want it for somebody else, but not for ourselves. So this is hypocrisy, and we have to deal with it face forward and address them bravely. And whatever I enjoy for myself, for my kid, for my family here in the United States, in Europe, or anywhere else in the West, let's have the same rights for the people in Afghanistan. If I don't like what I'm doing here, then I should not be living in such an environment, because if I don't like it, let's go back to whatever thoughts and ideas I have. Let's do that then why all the Afghans are who are in the West got out of Afghanistan first time. So this is the very basic conflict that we have in ourselves. In the social media, for example, we have had staunch supporters of certain extremist ideas who don't even believe in freedom of speech, in freedom of movement, and freedom of choice here in the West. But they live under the same policies here in the West. They say the same thing under these laws, but we don't feel them or think of the same things for the Afghans living in Afghanistan. So we forget, we turn our back to the lives here, but we live it here. But we look at Afghanistan and tell them, you should live the way your leader should tell you life, rather than what I can tell them what sort of life I have here. You should have the same life in Afghanistan. So we, as diaspora, or the Afghan Americans, or the Afghans living in the United States on whatever status they are, can do a lot of stuff. There is social activism that we can help with. We have representatives in many parts of this country, in the United States or other parts. We can promote policies from our governments, be that in Canada, in the United States, England, Australia, in many parts of the European countries. There are governments who work in Afghanistan, who support Afghanistan. Let's promote that. Let's talk to those representatives. Let's talk to those people who can influence the policies and politics in Afghanistan for positive ways rather than negative. Let's promote those thoughts. Let's work with them. Let's remind them that we are here also to support you and what you're doing to help the Afghans in Afghanistan. That's the way I think we can contribute a lot. We have many jobs, different kinds of jobs, and we should be proud of that. Those jobs we have, doesn't matter if it's a $10 job an hour or $50 job an hour or $100 job an hour. It's a job. You feed your family, and that's your job. You have to be proud of, regardless who you are. But as citizens or as residents of any country, we enjoy the freedom of speech to share our thoughts and ideas openly with the people in the government and policymakers. I think we can promote and lobby for those ideas and thoughts that could help Afghanistan in many ways. the Americans here in the United States, I think the Afghans here in the United States, most of them can do a lot. They can get involved in the local issues, civil society issues, political issues. They don't have to be necessarily Democrat, Republican, or whatever, as long as they can promote Afghanistan's values, Afghanistan's importance. It doesn't matter if they support certain leader in Afghanistan, but they are from Afghanistan. It doesn't matter whatever language they speak. I speak Pashto my home, it doesn't matter I speak Dari or Pashto or Uzbeki or Turkmeni, but as long as we are from Afghanistan, we keep that baggage out of it, and we work for something that is we can contribute to. It doesn't matter if I'm Pashtun, Tajik, Hazara, Uzbek, Turkmen. We are here for all of the people here recognized as Afghan Americans or people from Afghanistan, not on certain ethnicity or anything else. So I think there is something that brings us together as one group. We can contribute in many ways, as long as we think openly, as long as we open our minds to working together, as long as we open our minds to forgetting what the past had done. Many people say one ethnic group suffered a lot in Afghanistan. I'd say all ethnic groups suffered a lot in Afghanistan, many in different scales. Yes. That is clear throughout the history. I mean, I don't say I should claim a higher position in the society because I suffered a lot. All of us suffered in different scales. Right now, the people who are in rural area of Afghanistan where Taliban are fighting, those people are suffering more than anybody else. Yeah. Their families are being slaughtered, they're being killed. So it's the conflict that has scattered us also puts us together as one Afghan nation.
This is true, absolutely. And بسیار چیزای مهم و جالب شما گفتین دکتر صاحب. اول از این که I'll start backwards که امی که در افغانستان خو یک گپ بود، اما امی نجات پرستی و قوم پرستی حالا که دیگه امریکا هستیم، در مملکت‌های اروپا یا هر جایی که هستیم، اصلا اول از این خو باید هیچ فرق نباشه بین پشتون، هزاره و تاجک، Uzbek, اما ترکمن, all the other ethnicities. اما دوم از این چون کل ما در یک مملکت هستیم که دور از کشور خود هستیم، دگان باید از اتفاق ما قوی‌تر شود. و بسیار یک حدیث مقبول پیغمبر ما محمد صلی الله علیه و سلم که شما گفتین که اونمون چیزی را که برای خود میخوایم برای دیگران باید بخوایم. ایتا نمیشه که مثلا ما اینجا درست است که طالی داشتیم، نصیب قسمت ما بود، الله سبحانه و تعالی برای ما نصیب کرده بود که ما اینجا باشیم و بسیاری نفر است که این نصیب هنوز ندارن، هنوز افغانستان هستن یا میخواین کجا باشن یا هر سیچویشن که دارن. بسیار مهم است که متوجه شویم که حرف زدن بسیار آسان است و you know, in English we say talk is cheap, right? Like پیسه کار نداری که گپ بزنیم. بسیار آسان است که ما بگوییم که من زندگی خود این رقم پیش میبرم، شما در افغانستان این رقم پیش ببرین. اما کار غلط است. باید کوشش کنیم چیزی که برای خود میخوایم برای برادر خود و خواهر خود در افغانستان کشور خود همچنان بخوایم و کمک کنیم. بسیاری چیزهایی که شما گفته بودین درست است. هر فامیل تا جایی که من میفهمم اگه میتونن از دستشون برابر باشه رای میکنن پیسه در افغانستان، کمک میکنن، یک کس اسپانسر میکنن. این کارا خود درست است. این بسیار چیزهای شخصی است که یک فامیل برای یک فامیل دیگه میکنه. اما به خیر از او دیگه کارام است که آدم میتونه یک سوسایتی یک جای شوه اتفاق کنه بکنه. من که خورد بودم به یادم میآید که تا که نام افغانستان یاد میشه به تلویزیون یا هر جای چشمم باز میشه و دیستیگک میخواستم که خانم میامدم دیستیگک به پدر خود قسم کرد و مادر پدر در تلویزیون یا در مکتب امروز افغانستان یاد کنن. برای من بسیار یک چیز جالب بود چون قدر وقتی که من کلان میشدم او وقت نو جنگ شروع شده بود و نو روسیه در افغانستان بود، جنگ روسی بود و او وقت زیاد امریکا تشویق میکردن که you know pro American pro افغانستان بسیار در نظر خوب افغانستان دیده میشه. اما در ظرف زندگی خودم شخصیاً خواستاستا مخصوصاً بعد از 9/11 او بیخی او نظر بیخی تغییر کرد. پدرم قصه میکنه، میگه وقتی که من 13 از این مملکت شدم، کلگی در اتاق ستاد شدن در روی دست بسینه. بسیار کلان گپ بود در اون وقت، در 70s یا 80s یک افغان امریکایی شود و سیتیزنشیپ خود بگیره. همگی احترام داشتن به ما و کشور ما و کلتور و فرهنگ ما. اما متاسفانه که این بسیار تغییر کرده از روزی که 9/11 شده. این در میدیا بسیار افغانستان به نظر بد نشان داده میشه و وظیفه ماست که در افغانستان نیستیم که اتفاق کنیم و در civilly engage شویم. به معنای از این که اگر شما یک چیز رو دیدین در خبر و غلط بود، یا اگر شما دیدین که یک گپ است در افغانستان، بسیار کار آسان. هر کس، ما میفهمم ایره در برنامه پیش هم گفتیم راجع به انتخابات، هر کس این امکانات نداره که یک انستیتوشن جور کنه یا مثلا زندگی خود دریکیت کنه. ما این تشویق نمی کنیم. اگه یک کار بسیار کوچک اما بزرگ میشه، همگی میتونه که یک خط نشته کنه برای کانگرسمن خود. همگی میتونه که یک مثلا یک کانتریبیوشن، اگه نمیتونی وقتش نداری، پیسه خود میتونی بدید برای یک ارگانی که همکاری میکنه همراه افغانستان. بسیاری راههای دیگه داره کمک کردن، نه تنها از این که باید بسیار اکستریم مجر باشه یا بسیار چیز فوق‌العاده باشه. و دکتر صاحب، یک سوال دیگه براتون داشتم که به نظر شما کدام تکنیک یا کدام راه حل است در می پروسه سال در افغانستان؟ چی تغییرات باید بیاید یا اگه تغییرات نباشه چی فکر میکنین که بهتر میسازه این پروسه را که همیال فعلا هست؟ I'll ask the question in English as well. In your opinion, what kind of strategy can the peace process in Afghanistan use to help the peace process kind of progress? As far as I know that the Trump administration has started this process, and very shortly, in a few weeks, that administration will end and another one will begin. How can this improve?
Well, let me take it back to the Trump administration and Taliban agreement. I know it was an idea that generated hope among Afghans that peace is coming finally to Afghanistan. But let's not forget Trump's efforts were not strategic in Afghanistan at all. The reason why President Trump went and signed an agreement with the Taliban was not for the reason bringing peace to Afghanistan, but having a political victory for the elections of 2020. So there's a huge difference between being strategic and being politically tactical for the audience in the United States. President Trump's approach to Afghan peace was just a small issue that could deliver him a tactical win based on the promise that he made to the American public in 2016 that he would end all wars of the United States abroad, be that Iraq, Somalia, Syria, or Afghanistan. None of them happened. He didn't end Iraq war, he didn't end Syria war, he just pulled troops from Somalia, and he's still struggling with Afghan issues. That was the tactical approach to the very strategic and very important issue of Afghanistan, which blew back badly on him. It did not deliver him any tool to claim as a victory, as ending the longest war in the United States in Afghanistan. And on top, he lost the elections. But who suffered in the meantime? The Afghans did. So we have to be very careful on approaching it. Was it a strategic move for Afghanistan benefit? No, it was a very political move that many Americans disapprove of right now. The Democrats right now, Biden administration disapprove of that approach. Everybody wants to end the conflict in Afghanistan for good. But how they end it, that's a question mark. That's a big question. Do we need to end it in a way there, just like the United States did in Iraq, where they had to go back to fight ISIS? Just like they did in Afghanistan, the United States withdrew from Afghanistan its attention in the 90s, but it had to go back after 9/11. So we have to learn from the history here. How do we approach these strategic situations? This agreement, unfortunately, is not a peace agreement. It's a withdrawal agreement with Taliban. There are many items in this agreement that does not guarantee a long-term peace in Afghanistan, but it guarantees a peaceful withdrawal of the United States forces from Afghanistan. It abandons a lot of stuff to Taliban, accepts their demands. It's a lot of concessions to Taliban in many ways. The Taliban, as one of the factions of the fight in Afghanistan, conflict in Afghanistan, have played its destructive role in this whole conflict for the last many years. And this is a win for them and a loss for the rest of the people. This is for sure something that President Biden would be looking at it again and assessing it, whether it will be raising another unfortunate incident in the future where the United States has to go back and tackle it, just like 9/11, or it will help the United States allied government in Afghanistan to sustain and maintain its presence for the longer term, where Afghanistan cannot become another hotbed of terrorists, another conflict zone, but become a hub of activity where everybody can benefit, both the people in Taliban or in the government can benefit from that economic prosperity. So when we go through the intra-Afghan dialogue and talks, both sides should understand that whatever outcome we're getting out of those talks should benefit Afghanistan. But it doesn't look so. The talks, especially from Taliban side, are not, looks like apparently, for so far, whatever we have heard, they're not after compromise, unfortunately. They're not there to compromise. So far, they have not compromised. They got more than what they could have. And they're not announcing a ceasefire. What's wrong with that? It would stop killing people, bloodshed. That is a problem. They think as if they're the winners. And who gave them that sense of winning? It was the Trump administration's agreement with them, because they conceded a lot to them without guarantees that they would do. One of the biggest promises Taliban made were to disconnect their ties with Al-Qaeda and other operatives, who were also foreigners, by the way, not Afghans. Remember, where the Taliban are talking, let's kick out all the foreigners. Well, there are other foreigners also that you're friendly with. So we have to disconnect. You have to disconnect your ties with those foreigners as well, if you want to talk and make it only Afghan ties, or talk with the Afghans. So there are parts to it, unfortunately, that are not implemented on the peace talks. But when we come to the intra-Afghan dialogue, the first goal is to bring peace and security to Afghan people, and in a responsible way. Many people claim that there was peace under Taliban. Well, it was not peace, it was absence of conflict. There's a huge difference between absence of conflict and peace. People were in Kabul, but there was fear. And when there is fear, that's not peace. There was a fear, if I go out, if I don't grow a long beard, I might be arrested or might be punished, I might be put in prison. That is not called peace. Peace is your physical peace, your mental peace, your eternal peace, and internal peace that gives you solitude within yourself, that you feel secure from all physical and emotional aspects of your life. There was no physical, there might have been some physical security, but there was no emotional security for any being. Any Afghan who would walk out in the streets was always in fear that a Taliban might come and hit me with something and force me to do something. That's not called peace. There was insecurity. Peace comes where everybody feel calm and this calmness of freedom, that nobody's going to come and attack me for whatever reason, emotionally, verbally, or physically. That is called peace. And those things are not guaranteed in the Taliban. So if we work for something like that, then there is an honest effort that has to be made by both sides. And compromises have to be made, both parties. Taliban have to realize that they're not going to get back what they had. Mind you, that Taliban government was not brought in by elections, by public poll, by public opinion. Actually, they came by force. And people didn't have a say in that government at all. Anybody who stood against any policy of that time of the government was either killed or punished or put in prison, or eventually fled the country. The city of Kabul, which right now have 5 million people, had about 200,000 people or less at that time. West of Kabul was ghost town, destroyed by the civil war before that, by the Mujahideen. And look at all this fear, this insecurity feeling. And if we work for a peace agreement, and those things should be determined in advance, what kind of Afghanistan we want to have. Something that we have to go back and then fight back against each other? No. I think we have come a long way that we should not forget, and we should not lose the sight of what we can be in the future, because that is an example. We can develop ourselves. That is a proof that we have done a lot and we can do more. The current government has a lot of problems. That's not hidden. There's a lot of corruption. There's a lot of security problems. There are a lot of bad people in the government. But that does not give you the right to destroy the whole system. We have a system that we never did. So let's preserve it and make it better rather than destroy it from scratch. Afghanistan should not be a laboratory for systems. We already have one. Let's strengthen that one. And that should be kept alive and helped with for the betterment of the people, for the better services to the public of Afghanistan.
Absolutely. اگر کدام مفاد می بود در این پروسه که شروع شده، اگر کدام نتیجه خوب میداد، خب هر روز در کشور ما خونریزی نمی بود، هر روز قتل نمی بود، هر روز مادرها و پدرها اولادای خود از دست نمی دادن. و امیدوار هستم که وقتی که ادمنستریشن نو بیاید بخیر یک آینده درخشان داشته باشه افغانستان و امی وضع بهتر شود. و چون آخر سال است و این آخرین برنامه ما از سال 2020 است، از پیش بینندگان خودم و همگی دوستا خواهش میکنم که سال آخر کنین امرای دعا و از پیش خداوند تعالی بزرگ بپرسیم که و دعا کنیم و عذر کنیم که امی خونریزی ختم شود. I really, it's funny because we talk about New Year's resolutions and end of year, and a lot of people ask me, so what do you do at the end of the year? It's been a tradition for me from as far as I can remember. We can't go to the masjid right now, but I do like to end my year in reflection and prayer. I ask that we all pray for those innocent victims of war in Afghanistan and all over the world, and that hopefully there will be with the new administration a different approach that will help end all of this heedless violence. And Dr. Saib, thank you so much for joining us. If you have any closing comments or any thoughts that you'd like to share with us before we end the show, we would love to hear it.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate this opportunity to speak with you openly from the core of my heart. There are rare occasions when you are given an opportunity to speak frankly on many issues. This was not a show, or is not a show where I could be more diplomatic or politically correct. I think it gave me an opportunity to speak directly to my fellow Afghans, wherever they are, to reflect and think with themselves honestly, to seek for others what they seek for themselves, which is good life, peace, security, and pride that they can contribute to Afghanistan in many ways. And I hope the next year is the year of peace, not only for Afghans, but everyone else in that region and everywhere they live. And I hope when we travel next time to Afghanistan, we travel to Afghanistan, which is aspiring, which is peaceful, which we want to live with in peace and security.
Absolutely.
And we can contribute. We can contribute in many ways. We might say, oh, I'm far away from Afghanistan. How can I do that? Just imagine what you could do with your effort, just speaking with your representative, with your political figures in your community. Just remind them that you are voting them because you have concerns and issues about US foreign policy or European foreign policy, Canadian foreign policy. You have a lot of power. You just have to realize your power.
Absolutely, and use voting and elections as leverage for these representatives, especially if you know somebody's up for election. I'm going to get X amount of people to vote for you. If you do this, you have to kind of use the beauty of this country is that we can do that. We
Absolutely.
can lobby and we can advocate for our country. and بازم دکتر صاحب از صمیم قلبم و از طرف صدای حق تلویزیون یک جهان سپاس برای وقتتان و همچنان برای که راجب از صمیم قلب خود حرف زدین. این بسیار مهم است برای ما و نظر خود دادیم به بسیار چیزهای مهم و سال نو براتون تبریکی میتم. تشکر. میفهم سال نو اسلامی نیست اما بازم سال نو امریکایی است و برای بینندگان عزیزم همیشه سطح خوب میخوایم و در هر نقطه دنیا که هستین خوش و آرام باشین. اگه کدام سوال یا کامنت داشته باشین برای دکتر صاحب در زیر سکرین نمره تلفن ما هستن، میتونین زنگ بزنین یا کامنت خود نوشته کنین و حتما جوابتان براتون میدیم. بازم روز و شب خوش براتون میخوایم. خدا حافظ.